interesting study here about giving an effective intergroup apology. And so there's a lot of past research that indicates that while apologies can be useful for interpersonal forgiveness, people are generally more skeptical of whether apologies are effective in an intergroup context and how they can really be effective. And so this study kind of examines these factors that can make up an effective intergroup apology. And so they take from this study by Nadler and Schnabel, 2015 study that looks at these various apology factors, which include structural, relational, and identity-related apology factors. And they look at, how do including these factors in an apology impact its effectiveness? And then second, how does the presence of remorse impact the effectiveness of an intergroup apology? The methods of this study this study was completed in the context of the Troubles, which was the Northern Ireland intergroup conflict, and was completed in the form of 3 studies, which we'll explain in a second. It should be noted that all participants were at least 35 years old and located in mainland Great Britain, meaning that they were at least 18 years old when the Good Friday Agreement was signed, which ended the Troubles. And it's helpful to understand also kind of what we mentioned before, that this study takes heavily from this Nadler and Schnabel model of intergroup reconciliation, looking at these 3 different factors of apology. And so the first study, there were 260 participants given a basic description of the Troubles to read, as well as a description of the perpetrator that would be given, that would be eventually giving an apology that they would be reading. The description of the perpetrator highlighted whether the apology would be coming from a large group, which would be the Irish Republican Army, a small group, which is the Irish National Liberation Army, or an individual, which was just a Republican soldier. And then after reading this given description, they were given one of 3 apologies. They were assigned to one of 3 conditions, each tailored to emphasize either the structural, relational, or identity-related changes that the perpetrator was willing to make in their apology. And then after this, they were filled out a survey, including their willingness to forgive and measuring their positive perceptions of the perpetrator. Study 2 was a little bit different. They were instead asked to read a modified version of the Irish Republican Army's original apology that they gave. And in the apology condition, this included an additional paragraph at the end of the apology that was composed of all 3 factors, the structural, relational, and identity-related factors that were mentioned. And they also included a high remorse condition where they added intense words to the apology to express greater remorse. And then the participants were given an identical survey that they were given in study 1. Finally, study 3, there were 280 participants, and this study kind of aimed to make a cleaner separation of the 2 manipulations from the apology factors and remorse to gain insight from some of the findings of study 2, which we'll discuss. And this included separate shame expression and guilt expression conditions, along with a control condition. So the participants were assigned to one of these 6 conditions, broken up by the presence or absence of apology factors, the presence or absence of guilt and shame, and then a no emotion control condition. And the measures were nearly identical to study 2 as well. So with these 3 studies, the results were that the authors found from the first study that the apologies offered by an individual were far more effective than those offered by a group, which was validated by past research. There was no significant difference between the 2 group conditions, and the size of the group seemed to be generally irrelevant. Interestingly, it was found that when a large group gave an apology, the structural apology elicited a higher positive perception of the apologizer from participants rather than the relational apology, which the authors were surprised at because the relational apology is supposed to be you're directly building trust, saying we want to rebuild trust with you in these ways, whereas the structural apology is more focused on how do we give reparations, how do we maintain equality now that all this has happened. The second study, it also elicited an interesting result. As expected, the inclusion of all 3 apology factors elicited greater positive perceptions, but were stronger when there was no enhancement of remorse. However, the participants given the condition absent of the apology factors found that higher remorse enhanced a level of forgiveness and positive perceptions. And this study also found, kind of like study one, that positive perceptions of the perpetrator fully mediated the impact of the apology factors on forgiveness, which validates kind of the common knowledge and other studies that show that the perception of a perpetrator and who they are and their character, and kind of depends on how you accept their apology and how you think of their apology. Finally, the last study found that the inclusion of apology factors and emotional expression led to a non-significant higher willingness to forgive by participants. So positive perceptions of the apologizer were greater when apology factors were included and when shame was expressed. Guilt, however, did not significantly impact positive perceptions. And so kind of the couple key takeaways from here, from this study, were that one, including these structural, relational, and identity-related factors into an intergroup apology can lead to greater willingness to forgive and greater positive perceptions of the perpetrator. And I think this other finding is interesting and potentially helpful for organizations as well, that when you have large groups apologizing, it may be more effective to give an apology focused on promoting equality and reparations rather than expressions of just rebuilding trust, because this study showed that expressing and showing how you're going to maintain equality and all of that from now on, after this whatever heinous act was committed, will lead people who are listening to you to more likely have positive perceptions of you and potentially elicit forgiveness. And as it mentions here, greater trust. So I found this interesting, and I'm happy to go into some of the conditions as well, how they structured a structural versus relational versus identity related apology, but interested to hear what you guys think.
Noah, are you the one that did this one, that summarized this one? Yeah, I'm curious. So the first key takeaway where it says intergroup leads to greater willingness to forgive and greater positive perceptions of the perpetrator.
Yep.
It leads to greater positive, they measured positive perceptions of the perpetrator?
Yeah, it was the positive, or I guess you could, the apologizer, the positive perceptions of them. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I was confused. So there was actually people that were part of the group that did the harm that were making apologies?
No,
part
so
of the starters?
It was all on just, it was an online experiment. So it was all just, they gave you a kind of description.
Yeah, never mind. Sorry, I misinterpreted what they say. What I thought you were saying that the positive perceptions, the perpetrator's positive perceptions. But what you're saying is it's the positive perceptions of a perpetrator as the target. I got you. Okay.
Right, exactly. Yep.
I was confused.
This is interesting, and it's making me think of larger social issues. And so, especially for an organization, like if something is structurally, off balance or wrong, right? What this is saying is, and I'm curious what their definition, how they, look at a structural apology versus a relational one. But I mean, I'm thinking of it in larger issues. I have an idea, but with organizations. So if there's an issue or someone, there's an off balance with a standard operating procedure or someone's role and responsibility, and it's not just a one-on-one issue or challenge, then it's then there's a greater kind of shift or transformation if it's made not by the one person, but by I'm trying to put this into an organizational context, and I think I'm understanding, but maybe we can talk this out of what like a structural apology looks like compared to.
So they define, structural factor, they define as the status and power relations between the groups. So if one group was disadvantaged relative to another, there needs to be a shift to greater equality. And so the apology recognizing that and then I guess, implementing. I can kind of share what they actually read in the manipulation, but recognizing that and providing kind of proof that they're going to be acting according to that desire to change and that power and quality.
Okay, so but again, coming from not just an individual, but
like a statement, like a statement coming from the group or something, right? Is that what the structural or apologies, a statement from the group rather than like an individual actually coming, like a representative coming forward and apologizing?
Not quite. So the structural, so you can have a structural apology is probably more better suited to a larger group. How they actually separated in the first study was they had a large group give the structural apology, a small group give the relational apology, and then the individual give the identity related apology. And they didn't find really that they found the individual apology to be effective, but didn't find that much effectiveness with the two groups. But in study 2 and 3, they included all three of these different categories together within a group context. So it is within the Irish Republican Army's apology, which is a larger group. And let me see if I can find I'll try to find that manipulation so we can kind of get a clear picture of what that looked like too.
This is a large, I mean, this is a large paper because it's got 3 studies and each of the studies are fairly complex. They've got like, a 3x3 design in one, and there's like a 4x2 design in another one, it seems like. So There's a lot to unpack here, it seems like.
Yes. Yeah, it was a big one. Let's see.
And I guess the main question is like, okay, so let's say we have these 2 groups. Let's say there's no power differential. I mean, it's literally just like there's a sales department and then there's the marketing department or something like that. It's like there's no power differential. It's just these 2 groups, and one of them like does something that just completely screws up the other group. So any thoughts as to like, okay, what would be the best method of repairing that damage where one group is just like gone off, done something outside of their normal lane and really screwed up the other group or something? Like, would it be a representative coming and giving some particular sort of apology versus the whole group making a statement, and that's a different type of apology or something like that?
Well, that's a good question on the I didn't think about the representative. When you have like one person, I don't know how it'd be an interesting study to see how someone representing an entire group would come in and give an apology. Whereas I think in this study, like the individual was primarily apologizing for their own actions.
Oh, I gotcha.
And so that kind of changes it a little bit. But it seems to me like the biggest takeaway is including these 3 factors in the apology. If you're a department, including these structural, relational, identity related factors.
So it'd be kind of like making sure that within the apology, it's like addressed the policies or procedures or something structurally that we screwed up. B, the relational quality is like the fact that we didn't consider our relationship with you or consider like how it could hurt you in your jobs and stuff. And then like third is the identities, like maybe that's part of it too, is like how it could hurt your position, your role in the company, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like so structural, I think, would be kind of like a lot of it I think has to do with your intentions moving forward too. So I think structural would be something like, here's the type of changes that we're trying to make in terms of our policies so that this type of thing doesn't happen again, to keep us in line. And then for the relational factor, it would be we have a real desire to build trust with you again, because we realize that we've broken that trust, and so help us figure out how to do that moving forward. And then identity related would be I think that kind of focuses on the validation of unmet needs in a way, because the identity related threat factor refers to identity related threats to victims and perpetrators. Like, for example, victim groups may feel humiliated and want to seek revenge.
Right. It's like delegitimizing someone, their their significance and their role in this system. And
Exactly.
so validating, legitimizing, making it clear, like, we don't think less of your role or your department or your group. We think that you're just as important as us. And
but also with a focus on kind of accountability and how they're going to kind of promote equality and reparations if a certain group is considered at fault. Like, so if Jeremy and you're, if it's the sales department and the marketing department, something happened and the marketing department did something, they were at fault in some way with the sales department, then they would have to not only give this apology identifying those three factors, but also sort of the now what, like the focusing on the future, but not just saying, okay, how can we rebuild trust? Not how can we not, so this study is saying not just like there needs to be a long-term solution that is going to promote the
like,
continuation of it. Like
what are we going to do going forward to make sure this doesn't happen again? What kind of structures do we need to put in place? What kind of policies? What kind of accountability? Whatever,
Right.
So there's both like a reconciliation, but also a plan for the future. It's kind of like, what we do. Yeah.
Yeah. This is also making me think of in one of our trainings recently, we talk about, when to give an apology and when not. And it led to like a conversation on really having to have your, like, checking your motivation and your intention behind it and making sure that you're apologizing, when it's appropriate. And I think we emphasize that frequently. And when so not only kind of checking your motivation, appropriateness for the apology, but again, always focusing on the now what. Okay, what are you going to do moving forward?
Yeah. Acknowledging the past, but then making sure we get to envisioning the future.
Yep.
Yeah, to try and stop the cyclical nature of it happening again.
Right.
I think these are all really the actually cyclical nature is something that they mention a little bit in the apology. Well, at least showing the apology kind of forgiveness cycle and the importance of that in these intergroup longstanding conflicts. So I think it's interesting to have a study about intergroup apologies, because I don't know how exactly common that is. And I'm hoping that more can kind of come out of it, especially kind of with your point, Jeremy, about that, if you have an individual representing a group, how does that impact the apology? And I think there's a lot of interesting implications here.